Hey guys, Randy Potato here, bringing you all the new hero paths from Darkest Dungeon 2's most recent update. As this update just dropped, I'll add a disclaimer that I have not played any of these paths yet. These are just my first initial impressions. Now let's start with the Grave Robber. Her new path is called Venom Drop. She loses 50% damage for her rain skills, along with 3 speed. She gains 2 additional blight when she is stealthed. Now, Flashing Daggers applies a small blight of 1 on upgrade 2, and her movement skills, so pirouette and lunge, as far as I know, those are her 2 main movement skills, have a 30% chance of applying blight. First impressions are fairly weak compared to Nightsworn and Deadeye. The very small blight does not make up for her losing so much range skill damage, and the adding blight when cloaked is not very consistent because stealthing yourself is not very consistent. So overall, not too impressed with this ability. I would rank it the weakest of her 3 paths, and maybe even weaker than her regular Wanderer path. Next up, we have the Hellion with the Carcass path. She gains when crit. She loses stress when crit. Barbaric Yop now adds taunt. Wicked Hack now removes block. She gains a winded token on the start of every turn. And at the end of her turn, she has a chance to add block tokens based on how many winded tokens she has. Now, in my opinion, this is a very bad Hellion path. Hellion, generally you want to be a damage dealer. She's great at being a damage dealer. This turns her completely into a tank. And worse, she doesn't have the HP of the Leper, nor the riposte of the Man-at-Arms to fully function as a great tank. This is certainly the weakest of her 3 paths, in my opinion, and much weaker than even the Wanderer path, because of the winded token buff, the winded token at the start of every turn. Next up is the Highwayman with Yellow Hand. He reduces bleed resist when using melee attacks, gets a 15% max HP buff, loses 75% damage on ranged skills, which is basically all the damage. And now Highway Robbery steals a positive token, which it does on upgrade, but this does it now at its base ability. And I believe, if I'm reading it correctly, will steal a 3rd positive token on upgrade. And Double Cross now removes block. Now, the big problem I have with this, like I said, it's sort of redundant. Highway Robbery upgraded already steals positive tokens. 2 positive tokens. And I don't really see a reason to lose so much range damage just so you can steal an extra positive token. Same with Double Cross. Double Cross already removes block because it deals damage, and removes additional block by applying vulnerable. Now this will chew through multiple blocks and maybe still leave vulnerable behind, but as I said, losing all this damage is a big price to pay. Now I do like lowering bleed resist, I do like max HP. Obviously this will be primarily a melee dealer, but I'd probably say it's the weakest of the 3 paths, and probably on par or weaker than Wanderer. Not very impressed. Next is the Jester with Intermezzo. Now this is very interesting. Song skills, which are about half of her skills, now apply a bleed. I believe this applies both to the enemy, in the case of, say, Solo or Finale, or Echoing March, or on your own heroes, in the case of Battle Ballad, Play Out, Inspiring Tune, etc. Inspiring Tune now adds Stress Resist. Echoing March, which is the Hellion's ability which pulls every turn an enemy, now applies a very small bleed. And most interestingly, Battle Ballad and Play Out now has a chance of applying either a crit, a dodge plus, a strength, or a block token. I really like this ability. I find Battle Ballad to be a very strong ability, and now with a chance of adding crit or additional defense, I find Buffbot Jester just got a huge buff. I'm interested to try this path. It's definitely stronger than Wanderer, and we'll see how it fits in with Virtuoso and Soloist. Next up is Monarch Leper. I see this path as very much an escort mission. Leper's base max HP goes down 30%. Chop skills down 75%, making it basically worthless. It buffs Purge and Intimidate by adding a vulnerable token. And then against cosmic enemies, which are the boss enemies, the Heart, Seething Sigh, and I believe the Shambler, but primarily the bosses, you gain 50% max HP, 2 speed, and 100% damage to chop. So very much this is, you do your whole run with support Leper, and then against the boss, you finally get yourself an incredible damage dealer. So as long as you can find the right team to fit this in, I believe this will be an incredible path, far superior to Poet, potentially greater than Tempest, definitely better than Wanderer. I'm very excited to use this path. Next we have the Man-at-Arms. Now they changed the original Bulwark path to Vanguard, and this is an entirely separate path. And this new Bulwark path gets reduced crush and riposte damage. Shield attack skills get plus 50% increased damage. Your shield attacks are Rampart, Hold the Line, and Courageous Abandon. Your shield attack skills now have a higher stun chance. And your Stand Fast, which is the ability that constantly provides you block tokens, now also provides Taunt. Now this, I believe, is quite a strong path. It's very much a Courageous Abandon path. You'll start out running Stand Fast, getting yourself taunts, getting yourself block tokens, and then running Courageous Abandon at very high damage. Downsides are obviously Crush and Riposte are not useless, but very, very weak. They're not strong damage dealers like the original Bulwark. But this is certainly much stronger than Wanderer, much stronger than Sergeant Man-at-Arms, weaker than Vanguard, but still, I would put this one of the strongest heroes in the game and one of the strongest paths. Next up, we have Aspirant Occultist. Aspirant Occultist receives plus 25% max HP, 50% melee damage skills, Anamnesis skills 150% damage. That is the AoE bleed that you use with unchecked power. It loses debuff chance with his cursing skills and debuff resist altogether, and starts every combat with a block plus token. I really like this path. Lots of sustain between the block token and the extra HP. You get a fairly strong sacrificial stab. Not as strong as the original Ritualist, but still very respectable. You lose the curses, but you don't lose them. You lose debuff chance. But you also gain Amnethesis damage. This gives you about 15 AoE damage plus bleed. It's still not as strong as, say, Burning Stars or Malediction, but it's probably worth putting on your bar at this point. I think this path is fairly interesting and definitely one to try out. Next, we have the Plague Doctor with the Physician path. This path deals less blight and bleed, but makes Disorienting Blast have stronger stun chance, gives Ounce of Prevention stress resist, Emboldening Vapors applies an extra strength to your target, Disorienting Blast now vulns, and on the downside, any heal also applies a weak token to your character. I cannot say I'm a fan of this path. Obviously, you lose your Noxious Blast and Plague Grenade damage, and in return you get a very small buff to Ounce of Prevention. This is still not something I would like to spend an entire turn casting. A very weak buff to Emboldening Vapors. Like I said, Emboldening Vapors already gives you one strength token. Giving one extra is not a huge buff. The Vuln from Disorienting Blast is nice, and the extra stun chance is interesting, but you're very rarely stunning with Disorienting Blast anyways, because generally you're using your combo tokens on something more interesting. And of course, the Weaken from heals is quite a big nerf. Definitely weaker than the Surgeon path, definitely weaker than the Alchemist path, and I would probably prefer a Wanderer over a Physician Hellion, Physician Plague Doctor. So, not very impressed by this path. And lastly, we have the Runaway. This is probably my favorite path. The Runaway in general got a buff with how they're used. They're much more flexible now, and this path just increases their flexibility. You lose 20% max HP, and in exchange, you get to basically choose how you want to use your Runaway. If you have Runaway in rank 1 or 2, you deal less burn damage in exchange for more flat damage. This is actually pretty good because Searing Strike is already a fairly weak dot, but a decent sized physical attack. So now you're just emphasizing the damage even more. And if you choose to play her in the back 2 ranks, you sacrifice some damage for an extra dot. And this is nice because her back rank ability, Firefly, is already a strong dot that doesn't do much damage anyways. In fact, an upgraded Firefly from rank 4 will now do 7 damage per turn. Over 3 turns, which is 21 damage, so you don't really need the physical damage there. As an additional bonus, when you use the Firestarter skill, you get crit on yourself, which obviously extends the range of your dot if you're in, say, the back line, or further increases your damage if you're in the front line. So a very flexible hero. You can run the Runaway in any position as an orphan and feel very comfortable. In my opinion, my favorite path. Anyway, those are all the hero paths. Like I said, a lot of weak ones, but I'm very happy they increased the complexity. In my opinion, all these paths are more complex than the original paths and can completely change the way you play an individual run, making each individual run seem much more unique, much more fun, extending the game's life cycle, in my opinion. Anyway, thanks everyone for watching, and I will see you next time.